The January transfer window opens in less than 24 hours. It might be open by the time you're watching this. So today I'm looking at some of this week's biggest rumours. I did it a couple of weeks ago. We're updating it again. You guys sent in all of these suggestions on X. If you want to be involved next week, go and follow me over there. We're going to start with James McAtee, who seemingly could well leave Manchester City. That's according to The Telegraph. And Crystal Palace are the side that are being linked. Now, you've got a feel for James McAtee, haven't you? Because he came through as part of that age group that was so exceptional at Manchester City. Your Morgan Rogers, your Cole Palmer. And those players have really gone to a whole new level by exiting Manchester City. You think Morgan Rogers, who went to Middlesbrough, now to Aston Villa and is flying. You think of Cole Palmer, who hit the ground running straight away at Chelsea. But they've all flown the nest and have had significant career rises because of it. Is it James McAtee's time? Because prior to the weekend, he'd played 2 minutes of Premier League football this season. I actually thought he was really good against Leicester City, which kind of twigged in my mind the idea that he should have got more minutes this season. It's fairly unbelievable, actually, that he'd played 2 minutes of Premier League action given the state of Manchester City before the weekend's football. Now, last year at Sheffield United, it was okay. He was definitely one of their better players, one of their better performers. He put up 30 appearances in a side that were pretty disgraceful. I wouldn't lay that at the feet of James McAtee at all, though. I also really like the fit to Crystal Palace. You know, Eberechi Eze has pretty obvious injury problems and has done throughout his entire career. There's also way too much pressure on him to come in and score goals and be involved. Ismail Assar has certainly looked improved over the last few weeks, but again, behind those two, Daichi Kamada, do I think he's ready to consistently provide goals and assists in the Premier League? I'm doubtful. I think Eddie Nketiah is better as a number 9 than in one of those two roles. So there isn't loads of depth following the exit of Michael Elise, who of course took with him nearly, 16, 17 goal involvements last campaign. For me, this would be an almost perfect move for everybody involved. Let's get James McAtee some playing time. If it's not going to happen at Man City, it's got to happen at another Premier League side. Now, these are in a totally random order, but the next one also involves Manchester City, and it's the continued bubbling of links to Ola Aina that we've seen over the last week. Now, for me, this one is just unrealistic. I don't see any world in which Nottingham Forest let their best performer maybe go in the January window. Certainly their most used player, more minutes than any outfield player in the Nottingham Forest squad. Obviously, you can talk about the importance of Chris Wood's goals or Morgan Gibbs-White's finesse, Anthony Elanga on the break, Elliot Anderson, the centre-back duo of Murillo and Milenkovic, which have been rock solid. But for me, if I was picking a halfway point team of the season, I would probably have Ola Aina as the Nottingham Forest name in that 11. He has been magnificent this campaign, able to cover at left back, at right back, at left wing back, at right wing back, super versatile. The fact they signed him for free is amazing. But I do think this move has a few things going against it as well. Where does Ola Aina fit into that Manchester City back four? Because the right back has been Rico Lewis, who wants to invert, or Carl Walker, who wants to tuck in and play as part of a back three. Rarely do we see wing backs in a traditional sense, players that want to fly on the outside under Pep Guardiola, so I'm not sure it totally suits him there. He's 28 years old, but for me, Man City are going to be targeting a little bit younger than this. Gregor Kobel has been linked to Chelsea, another transfer I'm going to put down as a potential summer option. I still think that Chelsea can upgrade in the goalkeeper department. But Gregor Kobel is too key to Borussia Dortmund to leave in the January window. An absolute vital component, one of the best goalkeepers in Germany, despite the fact he's ranked 17th or 18th for post-shot expected goals. I still see the value in him coming to Chelsea. It would be an upgrade on Robert Sanchez for me. We've seen them chopping and changing. We saw Jorgensen used between the sticks against Ipswich. It's not quite working there. Is Kobel, though, the future for Chelsea? At 27 years old, he's under a long-term contract at Borussia Dortmund. It would not be cheap to get him out. And you think of Enzo Maresca's Leicester, Mads Hermansen, and how good he was with his feet. Is that Gregor Kobel? I think Chelsea will look to sign a world-class goalkeeper in the summer. Kobel could be an option, but I would be slightly surprised. What about the links of Toby Collier exiting Manchester United for Leicester? Well, first and foremost, are Man United going to do business with a direct rival for relegation? Like, do we have to be serious here? Are Manchester United going to loan players to Leicester City who are actually in a relegation battle with them? I'm going to probably put this in, could it? He's obviously worked with Van Nistelrooy before. We've seen Sumare and Winks operating in there under Van Nistelrooy. They look okay, but they still look very vulnerable. They don't feel like they've got a lot of depth there. So maybe, but I'm being deadly serious. Can United afford to let players go on loan? in the January window after watching that last night. Let's go to Itakura, who is being linked heavily with Tottenham Hotspur. I'm going to put it in like, could it? I think Tottenham clearly needs central defensive depth. Behind Mickey van der Ven and Romero, Dragisan has struggled at times. Ben Davies isn't a natural centre-back. Archie Gray's being utilised there. So clearly they're going to look to bring another centre-back in. But do I think it should be Itakura? I think he is quite lightweight when I've watched him for Mönchengladbach. Yes, he is quick across the ground, but his frame is quite slight. It doesn't feel like it would be the most natural fit in the Premier League, and I think that's probably one of the reasons, if we're honest, that it didn't work at Manchester City. And at 27 years old, it doesn't feel like the kind of business Tottenham have done recently, which is much younger than that. Coming in as potentially the fourth choice centre-back, do you want that player to be a 27-year-old or do you want it to be a 21, 22-year-old who can develop, get minutes when players are injured and sort of learn his craft? I think that's probably the way to go. Next up, we got Antony to Real Betis. Now, obviously, they're not going to be able to afford this one unless Manchester United are subsidising wages. The reports of this one are that it would be a loan. The wages would be split. Again, the only positive to this would be is if Manchester United can use Antony's wages that Betis would be covering to bring somebody in. Because United really cannot afford to let players go unless they're getting money or a substantial wage covering for them. Do I see that happening with Antony? No. I think it's unrealistic that Betis is going to be able to afford to cover Antony's wages. I'm struggling with everything to do with Manchester United. Honestly, I just don't understand how they're going to survive in that January window. There's no money there. Players have got to be sold, not loaned. We're back to Manchester City where the links involving Dani Olmo continue. Now, Dani Olmo, some people might not be aware that are watching this video, has not yet been able to be registered for the second half of the season by Barcelona because of the financial issues the club are currently struggling with. There are reports that they're going to sell the VIP section of the boxes, 100 million euros, and use that lever to be able to register players like Dani Olmo. As of yet, that hasn't happened. That does mean that he wouldn't be registered and Barcelona might well have to let him go in January. Now, there are differing reports as to whether that would be as a free agent or if they would continue the contract and loan him and somebody would cover the wages. Manchester City are reportedly interested in his signing. So let's say he does leave on a free transfer and Manchester City are able to scoop him up. Would it be a good move? Well, he started the season really well at Barcelona, and Barcelona as a whole definitely benefited from his sort of elusive presence in and around the box. He scored 5 La Liga goals this campaign, but again, as has been the story of Dani Olmo's career, injury problems have really plagued him. He's missed over a month with that thigh problem, and as we can see throughout his career, it's been an issue really. Since he turned professional in 2016-17, the number of starts per season is just not good enough. You know, even when he was in Croatia, it was 8s and 9s. At Leipzig's, 9s and 7s. Over the last couple of campaigns, they've been slightly improved, 15 and 17 starts, but again, injury problems are a massive factor here. Manchester City themselves have suffered hugely with injury issues so far this campaign. Can Dani Olmo be trusted to come in and provide competent cover? Well, I think for Man City at this stage, they need warm bodies, honestly, and Dani Olmo would certainly improve the starting 11. The issue is here, is Dani Olmo actually the player Man City need? Or do they need defensive cover and probably a deputy to Erling Haaland? So I think it would be a good move. You know, he would definitely raise the floor of Manchester City, but with the quantity of attacking midfielders, players that want to play in those sort of half spaces like Dani Olmo does, I don't think it's a priority for Man City. And there's a lot of priority work that needs to be done deeper in midfield and at the back. Okay, let's go to Matheus Cunha going to Arsenal. This rumour was bubbling away in The Athletic, and for me, this one really would be an exceptional signing. He would offer cover as a 9, also as a left winger. I think he would be really well suited to that left wing spot in the Arsenal side. But let's not also forget that Bukayo Saka is out potentially long term, so his versatility and ability on the ball would certainly improve the forward line. He is also now really becoming a contribution beast. Last campaign, it was over 15 Premier League goal contributions. This campaign, he's already put up 14. 10 of them have been goals. The guy is improving week on week. He is single-handedly dragging Wolves through games. He's dropping deep into midfield, picking the ball up. He drives past people. He's in the top 5% of European forwards for take-ons and dribbles completed. He gets a decent quantity of shots off, not an elite quantity, not an Erling Haaland quantity, but he still scores goals. And I just think he has an X factor, an ability to beat 2 or 3 people and create something from nothing that would improve Arsenal. The fact he's only 25 as well must be a big positive for a club like Arsenal, who have recruited slightly younger. This is a player who's maybe not yet in his prime, one of the best ball carriers in the league with proven Premier League quality that would instantly come in, need no adaptation time. And Wolves, they have been a selling club in recent years. Max Kilman went for a decent fee. Pedro Neto went for a decent fee. Ruben Neves. They have traditionally done business at reasonable rates. Now, would that be the case with Cunha in the January window when Wolves are trying to survive, losing their best player by a mile? It would probably cost a premium, I'm not going to lie. But Arsenal might have to pay that. They're still involved in this title race. Do not write this season off. 9 points can be turned around quickly in this league. Players like Cunha would raise Arsenal's floor, and he would be a starter in that forward line in any of the 3 positions with Bukayo Saka out injured. We got a couple of Ligue 1 boys up next. Khusanov, first and foremost, to Newcastle. This rumour is bubbling away. Newcastle hopeful of a Botman return, playing brilliant football at the moment, super high energy, and obviously have utilised Dan Burn at centre-back, and he's put up 20 or so appearances across all competitions this season in that role. Fabian Schär continues to impress, but is getting no younger. They tried to sign Mark Guéhi in the summer, went up to £70 million for him, didn't they? And now apparently have sort of targeted Khusanov as being that long-term heir to the Fabian Schär throne. Now, it's certainly been a bit of a breakthrough season for the Uzbekistani. Like, he's still just 20 years old. We've all seen his physicality, I'm sure, by now, watching any Ligue 1 this season. You will have seen probably clips of him online going shoulder to shoulder with people. He is a physical beast. Really good reader of the game as well. I think the second most interceptions of any player in Ligue 1. I think this could be a perfect move. Honestly, I think he would not demand a starting role, but could be an able deputy in either the left-sided centre-back or right-sided centre-back positions. Obviously, long-term, you're hoping he partners Sven Botman. But there is also a potential issue surrounding Kevin Danso, who is reportedly a major target for Wolves in this window, and a player I think Lens are probably more keen to let go than Khusanov, who is the sort of long-term super prospect here. Now, part of that is down to the age. Danso's 26. He's still under long-term contract, though, until 2027. He's also played in a back 4 and a back 5. A bit like Khusanov, they have been able to switch between the 2 formations so far this campaign. But Wolves need centre-halves. We've seen Santi Bueno, Totti Gomez, Craig Dawson. But behind them, Lemina's got minutes there. Under Vitor Pereira, we've seen Matt Doherty used as a centre-back at times. Certainly, they're going to try and sign a centre-back in January. But could they actually sign Kevin Danso? Well, first and foremost, it's going to be fairly difficult to convince him to join. I think Lens are 7th in the league. Wolves are battling for relegation. But if we're honest here, the money might well be a big pulling factor. Wolves do have Premier League spending power. I'm going to say if Wolves can pull this deal off, it would be a really good signing. Both of these players would be great signings for their proposed clubs, but they're not both going to get moves in January. You're not going to get 2 centre-backs out of Lens in January. It won't happen. So one club's going to have to move harder than the other. Next up, we've got Randall Kolo Muani to Chelsea. Now, we've spoken about links involving him and Manchester United recently. Now I'm seeing links involving him and Chelsea. No, not for me. Like, Chelsea are stacked in that sort of area, man. You've got Nicholas Jackson. We saw Christopher Nkunku play yesterday against Ipswich, not brilliantly. You've got Mark Guiu in there as well. Where does Kolo Muani fit? He doesn't really operate too well in the wide areas in this system, where you see Jadon Sancho and you see Noni Madueke more as sort of 1v1 pauser style wingers at times. Kolo Muani is not really that guy. I don't get it at all. I think Chelsea are stocked in forward areas. If they're going to sign anyone in January, surely it's a keeper. I know that he started no games. I think it's 2 starts. He's clearly been axed. Fabrizio Romano talking about him definitely leaving. Luis Enrique has no love for the guy. But to Chelsea? Nah. Let's go to Joshua Zirkzee. Really tough to watch last night, wasn't it? Him coming off, sort of being cheered off. Didn't like to see that, to be honest with you. I thought it was pretty poor. He didn't play well, but I just don't like to see fans booing off their own players in any circumstances, to be honest with you. And it does feel a little bit hard to come back from. Does that mean his story with Manchester United is over already after 3 months, after a £35 million signing? And could Juventus be an option to sort of save him? Thiago Motta worked with him so well last season. Joshua Zirkzee was amazing for him at Bologna, won the Serie A Young Player of the Year award, and Thiago Motta knows how to get the best out of him. The league potentially suits him a little bit more, being slightly slower paced. So for me, this one could happen, but again, I struggle to see it being on loan. I think Manchester United would want some sort of fee. They might have to eat a massive loss already, or could it be like a loan with an option or an obligation to buy in the summer? That I could see happening. They cover his wages for 6 months. There's an optional obligation to make that move permanent. Juventus themselves, they're still unbeaten in Serie A, but there's a lot of draws in there, and they maybe are missing players that can contribute goals in that league. Vlahovic, obviously top scorer, but then behind him, I think you've got Tim Weah, who's got 4, Yildiz, who's got 3 this season. So could Zirkzee come in and contribute in forward areas alongside Vlahovic under a manager he knows? Probably. So I hope it goes well for him this window, whether that's the decision to stay and we find a role for him, or whether that's the decision to go to Juventus. Lots of suggestions from Liverpool fans asking me to talk about Jeremy Frimpong joining the club. No, not for me. Again, a player who I think is exceptional, but exceptional in a very specific role and system. We all know how Leverkusen play their football with this back five, with these wing backs that are extremely progressive and want to play very, very high at the pitch. At times we've seen when they've actually played a 4, Frimpong utilised as a winger. I don't see that working in the Arne Slot system. If anything, Trent Alexander-Arnold has become more reserved this season. His defensive numbers have jumped to new heights. He's still pretty creative, but from slightly deeper roles with his passing range. Frimpong wants to play well high up the pitch. I don't understand the fit with an Arne Slot system. Next up, we are updating the story about Bruno G. Manchester City still interested, according to the Times. Last week, or a week before that, I put it in, could it? You never know. Could Manchester City come in and break the bank? I'm still going to put it in there. I know that he is Newcastle's maybe most vital player behind Alexander Isak. He is a leader in the midfield. The position of Sandro Tonali slightly deeper feels like it's unlocked Bruno G even more. I think people forget that he put up 15 goal contributions in the Premier League last season, and I expect him to hit that number yet again this campaign. But Newcastle do have PSR issues, and if Manchester City want to come in with a £120 million bid for Bruno G, can Newcastle afford to reject that? And Man City have the money to come in with a £120 million bid. People seem to think that Man City aren't going to go out there and spend hundreds of millions of pounds in this window. I think it's perfectly plausible. They have saved their bank for a number of years now. In the summer, they spent less than Birmingham City. It's probably still a little bit unrealistic, but I also wouldn't be totally surprised. Newcastle fans, I know, won't want to hear that. Talking Martin Zubimendi next, but not to Manchester City. We're talking about him potentially joining Real Madrid. This rumour has bubbled away in Spain for a couple of weeks now, to be honest with you. And it is quite interesting. Now, Madrid are stocked with midfield options, aren't they? Valverde, Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Luka Modric, Dani Ceballos. But Luka Modric, out of contract in the summer, he's sort of doing that 1-year rolling stint. And Zubimendi might well provide a differing option to how Madrid want to play. Tchouaméni's minutes really have been split between centre-back and centre-mid. I struggle to see a world in which, if Zubimendi was to come in, Tchouaméni could survive. I think it's one or the other. And if Tchouaméni is getting cut, there's going to be a lot of clubs interested. Zubimendi has that €60 million clause as well, and they do miss a little bit of a metronome in midfield. I think they are an excellent side, but without Toni Kroos, they've got worse. And Toni Kroos' passing ability and ability to dictate a game kind of slipped under the radar in his latter years. Now, could Zubimendi come in and supplement that? Maybe. But again, you've got to convince him to get out of La Real, which is not going to be easy to do. They've lost the sporting director. He's leaving. Ornstein's reporting that it's increasingly likely Zubimendi's going to go. He's still young. Summer chances. Not in January, but in the summer, I could see Real going in for this. Next up, we've got Mark Gahey to Liverpool. Now, we saw summer bids for Mark Gahey being rejected at £70 million by Crystal Palace. A huge figure. The January window means the figure will not have dropped that much. Crystal Palace are still somewhat in a relegation battle right now, and Guehi is part of a key back three alongside Lacroix and Chalobah. The depth is not massive at Crystal Palace in that area, and it would cost a big fee to get him out in January. But in the summer, maybe. I think part of the problem of getting Guehi is he's so vital. Third most minutes of any player in the Crystal Palace squad this season. Captain. And Chelsea have that 20% sell-on fee. So it's not cheap. It's a difficult deal to get done. But in the summer, I think it's probably Guehi's time to move on. Let's talk about Nuno Mendes to Manchester United then. This has become increasingly more unrealistic week by week due to Manchester United's torrid form. United are actually involved in a relegation battle now. Nuno Mendes is not going to want to come. A couple of weeks ago, there was some sort of hope in my head that in the summer, could United convince him? Worked with Ruben Amorim in the past, under the same agency as Amorim, hasn't signed that new contract at PSG, but playing championship football, don't make me laugh. Same for Theo Hernandez. He's had a dub every week anyway, hasn't he? Because obviously Fonseca has been sacked. So Theo Hernandez, he'll be pretty happy, I would imagine, to see Sergio Conceição come through the door, if that is the truth, because clearly he was at war with Fonseca for most of the season. I think if Fonseca had stayed, there were chances Theo Hernandez would leave. But now he's gone. No chance. So that was this week's transfer tier list. As ever, I want you to send the rumours you've seen into me on X, and I'll look at them again next week throughout this window. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. See you later.